I sensed something was off as soon as the room fell silent. My daughter had just concluded her piano performance, her little fingers still quivering above the keys. The last sound had hardly dissipated before I noticed the absence of applause, or even nods of appreciation. Only stillness enveloped us. Then, I caught a hushed remark from a woman behind me saying, "That's the unfortunate girl, the one raised by a single mother." A tightness gripped my chest, and my ears buzzed. Turning around felt impossible. I remained seated, paralyzed, clutching the edge of my chair as if it could shield me from falling apart. My daughter's name is Zariah. At just 9 years old, she had poured her heart into her performance at her school's annual talent show the night before. She composed her own song, dedicating weeks to practice, investing every bit of her spirit. I witnessed her staying up, late after finishing her homework, headphones on, creating melodies on a tiny keyboard we purchased at a yard sale. She truly believed in her song. Yet, when she performed it in front of her peers, the judges, and a crowd of parents, there was no applause, not even a few sympathetic claps, just silence. I watched her from my seat in the middle row. After bowing as I'd taught her, she looked up, searching for some acknowledgement. When our eyes connected, I thought I noticed her swallowing her disappointment, confusion, and shame. I fought hard to hold back my tears. Just when I was on the verge of standing up, taking her hand, and leading her out of the auditorium as if we were escaping a blaze, something unexpected happened. A man rose from the back row where he was seated alone. He was older, tall, and dressed in a simple gray suit. His face bore no smile, and he remained silent. He began walking down the aisle towards the stage. I remember the room shifting, whispers rising, and the judges sharing puzzled glances. Holding my breath, I sensed that the way he moved made me want to stop considering an escape. Something deep inside me suggested this moment was not the conclusion, but rather the start of something significant. I am Maya Reeve, 33 years old, raising my daughter Zariah by myself since she was 2. We reside in a small, peaceful town in southern Zariah, Indiana, where everyone greets you but also pays attention to the car you drive and whether your child's backpack is new or not. People smile at you in grocery stores, yet later question others about why I remain single. I've lived in this town my entire life and usually blend in. However, occasions like the school talent show remind me that I don't quite fit in as they do. I hold down 2 jobs. By day, I clean at the middle school nearby, and by night, I work at a 24-hour diner located just off the highway, serving late night. Customers like truckers and teens craving fries at 2 a.m. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest. It covers my expenses and, most importantly, allows me to care for Zariah. Zariah means the world to me. She is gentle and kind-hearted. She doesn't spend time with the popular kids or follow trends. Instead, she has a passion for music that goes beyond just pop songs or radio hits. She enjoys unique, soulful tunes that resonate from deep within. At the age of 7, she began creating her own little songs, humming them into a recorder while saying things like, "This one feels like rain," or "This one sounds like missing someone." Last spring, I picked up a second-hand keyboard at a garage sale for $60. It didn't have a stand, and one key stuck. But when she switched it on, it lit up, and to her, it felt magical. After school, she would play it daily, her fingers dancing as if she were uncovering something sacred. Sometimes she played for hours with her eyes shut, searching for a sound that only she could sense. When her school announced the annual talent show, Zariah expressed her desire to participate. I paused briefly. She isn't one to seek the spotlight. Yet she told me, "I want everyone to hear what I wrote." That's how she referred to it. Not a performance or a song, merely what I wrote. Her pride was evident when she handed in the sign-up sheet. For weeks, she dedicated herself to practicing her piece. As I made dinner, her music drifted from the other room, and I often found myself pausing just to listen. What she created was hauntingly beautiful. She wasn't merely playing notes, she was narrating a story. However, I sensed her anxiety beneath the excitement. She rarely spoke about school. but I knew she was the only student in her class who brought lunch in a grocery bag instead of a themed lunchbox. Her shoes, while clean, were always a bit out of style. I understood that stepping onto that stage would be more than just about music. It would be about being noticed. Despite this, she kept rehearsing. She requested that I braid her hair nicely, but not overly fancy. The night before the show, she laid out her outfit, her favorite dress from last Easter. I carefully sewed the torn hem back together. When she looked in the mirror, a smile appeared on her face. I hold down 2 jobs. By day, I clean at the middle school nearby, and by night, I work at a 24-hour diner located just off the highway, serving late-night customers like truckers and teens craving fries at 2 a.m. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest. It covers my expenses and, most importantly, allows me to care for Zariah. Zariah means the world to me. She is gentle and kind-hearted. She doesn't spend time with the popular kids or follow trends. Instead, she has a passion for music that goes beyond just pop songs or radio hits. She enjoys unique, soulful tunes that resonate from deep within. At the age of 7, she began creating her own little songs, humming them into a recorder while saying things like, "This one feels like rain," or "This one sounds like missing someone." Last spring, I picked up a second-hand keyboard at a garage sale for $60. It didn't have a stand, and one key stuck, but when she switched it on, it lit up, and to her it felt magical. After school, she would play it daily, her fingers dancing as if she were uncovering something sacred. Sometimes she played for hours with her eyes shut, searching for a sound that only she could sense. When her school announced the annual talent show, Zariah expressed her desire to participate. I paused briefly. She isn't one to seek the spotlight. Yet she told me, "I want everyone to hear what I wrote." That's how she referred to it. Not a performance or a song, merely what I wrote. Her pride was evident when she handed in the sign-up sheet. For weeks, she dedicated herself to practicing her piece. As I made dinner, her music drifted from the other room, and I often found myself pausing just to listen. What she created was hauntingly beautiful. She wasn't merely playing notes. She was narrating a story. However, I sensed her anxiety beneath the excitement. She rarely spoke about school, but I knew she was the only student in her class who brought lunch in a grocery bag instead of a themed lunchbox. Her shoes, while clean, were always a bit out of style. I understood that stepping onto that stage would be more than just about music. It would be about being noticed. Despite this, she kept rehearsing. She requested that I braid her hair nicely, but not overly fancy. The night before the show, she laid out her outfit, her favorite dress from last Easter. I carefully sewed the torn hem back together. When she looked in the mirror, a smile appeared on her face. Zariah continued to play, her fingers steady on the keys. Each note was infused with her passion, as though it truly mattered, as if someone out there would connect with her emotions. Yet that wasn't the case, not in that moment. She concluded with a gentle, lingering chord that floated lightly in the air, fragile and unfinished. Then came silence. She executed the bow we had practiced perfectly, pausing for a heartbeat. Gradually, she lifted her head to survey the audience. There was no applause, not even a polite clap. A cough disrupted the stillness. A chair creaked. The judge in the center cleared his throat and flipped to the next page in his notes. That was all. Zariah lingered for a second too long, allowing me to witness the shift in her expression. Her once bright and hopeful smile faded into a tight, perplexed line. With her gaze lowered to the ground, she exited the stage. From across the room, I sensed her struggle to maintain her composure. My heart broke for her. I wished to jump from my seat, embrace her tightly, and whisk her away from this place, far from these people who couldn't see her true talent. I wanted to remind her that they were mistaken, that her music had significance, that she herself was important. But I remained frozen, my body numb, fighting back tears, fearing that if I allowed them to flow, they would never cease. Glancing around again, I noted the mothers with their polished makeup and designer bags, the fathers recording with their phones while barely paying attention, the judges already gearing up for the next performance. No one showed any interest. And that's when I felt something shift, subtle yet significant, from the back row. A man rose to his feet. He didn't resemble the others. His suit was plain, and he didn't have a phone in hand. Unlike everyone else, he neither clapped nor reacted. He simply stood there, as still as a statue, focused on the stage. Then he began moving toward the front. Heads turned. Someone murmured, "Who is he?" The judges exchanged glances, bewildered. The next act was meant to be a group dance. No one was slated to speak. I straightened in my seat, instinctively placing a hand over my heart. I wasn't sure who he was or his intention, but deep inside, I felt he had come for Zariah. Initially, no one hindered him. The man in gray proceeded steadily down the aisle, hands clasped behind him, calm, as though accustomed to being observed. He didn't rush, showing no signs of hesitation. With each step he took, the atmosphere grew quieter. Even the parents, who had been conversing, fell silent. The judges looked increasingly baffled. One of them rose halfway as if to stop him but sat back down, uncertain. The children backstage peeked around the curtain, their eyes wide with curiosity. My gaze was fixed on Zariah, who now stood at the stage's edge, partially hidden in shadows, pressing her music folder tightly against her chest. While she wasn't in tears, it was clear she felt unsettled. Her lips were pressed together, and her rounded shoulders suggested a desire to shrink away from the moment. As the man reached the front, he turned to the judges and said with a steady yet firm tone, "Excuse me, may I borrow the microphone for a moment?" His request was straightforward and polite, devoid of theatrics. The atmosphere in the room grew tense. A young judge in a maroon blazer briefly looked at his colleagues before giving a slight nod. Without uttering a word, a student volunteer handed over the microphone. The man slowly approached the center stage, faced the audience, and raised the mic. "My name is Dr. Elias Monroe," he began. "I wasn't meant to be here tonight. My return flight was canceled, so I decided to see my granddaughter's performance. But then I heard something that completely stopped me." He paused, and the crowd leaned closer. "Throughout my life, I've taught piano at Juilliard. I've coached concert pianists, film scorers, and soloists in symphonies. Yet, in all those years, only a few pieces have moved me as deeply as that young girl's music just did." The previous silence transformed. No longer uncomfortable, it was filled with respect. With a kind glance toward the side of the stage, he addressed Zariah, asking gently, "Did you compose that piece yourself?" She nodded hesitantly, caught between smiling and fleeing. Dr. Monroe turned to the audience again. "Ladies and gentlemen, that was an original piece. That was a true expression. That was art." A few gasps echoed, and a parent nearby whispered, "Juilliard," as if it were a name she had only ever heard in films. Continuing, Dr. Monroe requested, "I have a favor to ask. Zariah, with your approval, would you play your piece once more? This time, may I join you?" I could feel my breath halt. Zariah glanced briefly at me, and I gave her the tiniest nod I could muster without bursting into tears. With quiet steps, she made her way back onto the stage, her presence barely audible. Dr. Monroe allowed her to settle first before sitting next to her, sharing the bench rather than dominating it. His hands hovered above the piano keys, ready to follow her lead. Then, she started to play. This time, the notes were far from small. With Dr. Monroe's gentle chords supporting her, it seemed her melody discovered a long-awaited voice to resonate with it. He didn't overshadow her. Instead, he accompanied her, lifting her music as if it were soaring on a second pair of wings. The atmosphere in the room transformed. Laughter ceased, parents leaned forward, and the judges paused their writing. All eyes were fixed on her. Upon reaching the final note, silence enveloped the space for a moment. Suddenly, the whole auditorium erupted into a standing ovation, cheers, whistles, and applause that made hands sting. People who had previously overlooked her were now on their feet, applauding as if she had just received a prestigious award. Phones were held up, capturing the moment. I noticed one judge dabbing at her eyes. I rose too, clapping with such enthusiasm it was almost painful. And Zariah? She turned to Dr. Monroe and offered him the smallest, most genuine smile I had ever witnessed. In that instant, she was no longer the underprivileged girl. She had become a musician. She was recognized. I realized that everything had just changed. As the applause began to diminish, Zariah remained at the piano, her hands softly resting in her lap. Her eyes were wide, filled not with fear but with wonder. She surveyed the auditorium as if it were a new experience. Dr. Monroe leaned in to say something inaudible to us. She gave a single nod and, rising slowly, bowed once more. This time, however, her gesture was filled with pride and purpose. With her chin held high, she received the room's appreciation, far greater than during her first bow. As they exited the stage together, murmurs spread through the audience, curious about her identity. Parents who had previously overlooked her in the school pickup line were now straining to get a closer look. Children whispered in admiration. Even one judge trailed her backstage with a clipboard, grinning as if they had uncovered a precious gem. I stood among the crowd, still cheering, my heart racing, eyes brimming with emotion. In that moment, the opinions of others didn't matter to me. All I focused on was my daughter gaining the recognition she deserved, celebrated for who she truly was, not what she lacked. As she stepped off the stage, she dashed into my embrace. "I did it," she murmured against my chest. Words failed me. I simply held her even closer. Moments later, Dr. Monroe approached with a smile on his face. He extended his hand towards me, but before I could respond, he remarked, "Your daughter possesses an incredible talent, one that I rarely encounter." What she displayed was more than skill. It was authenticity. At last, I found the words to respond. "Thank you," I expressed. "Thank you for recognizing her and for offering her that moment." He nodded in acknowledgement. It wasn't my gift to give. She brought it to life. I merely ensured that everyone could witness it. He then pulled out a card from his coat pocket and handed it to me. It featured his name and a New York address. "If you're willing," he continued, "I would like to connect her with someone from a youth arts foundation that I collaborate with. They provide weekend workshops and private coaching for talented young composers. There's no need for an audition. I've already heard what I needed to." I was taken aback. Gazing at the card, I looked back at him. "But she has never had formal lessons," I replied. "And honestly, we cannot afford much right now." He smiled reassuringly. "That won't be an issue. This is about opportunity. She should be nurtured, not simply acknowledged." Zariah glanced up at me, uncertainty in her eyes, silently seeking my approval. I nodded, fighting back tears. "Say, thank you, baby." "Thank you," she replied, her voice soft yet firm. Dr. Monroe tilted his head, turned, and made his way back, toward the crowd. Later that evening, once we arrived home, Zariah insisted on keeping her dress on. She sat on the living room floor, keyboard in her lap, humming a fresh tune. I brought us bowls of cereal since I didn't have the energy to cook, and we settled cross-legged on a blanket, enjoying a picnic feel under the ceiling fan. After playing a few notes of her new melody, she looked up at me and asked, "Do you really think I can go to the place the music man mentioned?" I gently tucked a curl behind her ear and replied, "You already did." 5 months have passed since my daughter transformed everything just by being herself. We still live in our small house. I continue to work both jobs, and I bring home leftovers from the diner whenever possible. Occasionally, Zariah still wears shoes bought secondhand. However, everything feels different now, not due to an increase in money or possessions, but because my daughter sees herself in a new light. After that night, she began going to weekend mentorship sessions at a music school located about an hour away. Every Saturday morning, we wake up before dawn. I prepare a thermos of hot cocoa, and we drive together, just the two of us. Music plays softly in the car as her face rests against the window, gazing at the passing cornfields. She is no longer the same girl who was terrified to step onto that stage. Now, she discusses musical dynamics and the emotional layers of a minor chord. Her teachers note that she composes pieces with a depth they typically don't see in students much older than her. Occasionally, she plays that first piece, the one that went unnoticed. But now her performance is different, filled with confidence and certainty, not louder, just richer, as though she truly owns every note. And indeed, she does. I have changed, too. For many years, I thought we should keep our heads down, be quiet, remain grateful, and not ask for more than what we received. I believed that shielding her from judgment, failure, or feeling othered would suffice. Yet, I was mistaken. What she really needed wasn't protection, but the freedom to be heard, to occupy space, and to trust in her own voice, even if the audience remained silent. I nearly allowed that moment to pass us by. I nearly let her leave the stage thinking that silence equated to inadequacy. But one stranger, someone who chose to pay attention, ensured that didn't occur. That's what I keep reflecting on. It wasn't a miracle or simply luck. It was a conscious choice. Dr. Monroe didn't merely hear her music, he acknowledged it, and then he took action. Silently and powerfully, he sought not to save her, but to elevate her. Sometimes, it only requires one person willing to listen, intently to step forward when others remain seated, to remind a child, "You are not invisible." Often, all it takes to keep moving forward is the knowledge that someone recognizes your spark, even if just for a fleeting moment. Although that night did not instantly transform our lives, it provided my daughter with something beyond what I could have given her in a box or a bedtime story. It instilled in her a sense of worthiness to be seen. It also granted me a realization. It showcased that our narrative isn't solely defined by others' silence. Just because no one applauds doesn't imply the music should stop. You continue playing, as one day someone may finally hear you, and that person could spark a significant change. Now, whenever I see Zariah's hands on the piano keys, I no longer fret about who is observing her. She's no longer focused on impressing anyone. Instead, she's expressing her truth. This is the type of music our world needs much more of. If this tale resonated with you or sparked emotions, reflections, or memories of your own experience of feeling overlooked or finally acknowledged, please like the video. Share it with anyone who needs to know that quiet voices are important too. I would love to hear your stories in the comments. Tell me about someone who defended you, or a moment when you discovered your own voice. I read every message. If you desire more heartfelt stories that make you pause and truly feel, consider subscribing to our channel. There's more to come. Thank you for watching, for caring, and most importantly, for listening.